the Dead is one of the major touristic attractions in Siwa Oasis. It was the main cemetery of the city, situated only 1.5 kilometers far from its center. The oldest tombs in the cemetery belong to the 26th dynasty and the Ptolemaic period. Then it was reused to bury the dead along many centuries during the Roman period. So cuts were made in the side walls, then used to bury members of the same family, without consideration to what's pictured on these walls of figures and scenes. The mummies that were found in the burial chambers of these tombs date back to the Roman period and were not well mummified, although the method used in their mummification wasn't different from that used in the Nile Valley. The coffins and amulets and spells were the same ones used in the valley, and in other words, the people of Siwa were quite Egyptianized in the Greek and Roman periods. They had believed in the same creeds and had the same burial habits like the people of the Nile Valley. But to which race do the people of Siwa belong? A lot of skeletons and bones found in the looted tombs of Siwa were transferred to Cairo in the 20s of the 20th century. Dr. Derry has studied them carefully, and after running few studies on them, he concluded that they are not exactly similar to the Egyptians, but they are in many ways closer to the Ptolemaic and European features than the African nature. These natural differences between the Siwians and the Egyptians in the Nile Valley, and between them and the dwellers of the rest of the oasis, still exist till today. It's noticeable that there is no evidence till now that the Christians were buried in this cemetery, not far away from their pagan ancestors, as it's the way in El Kharga Oasis. Anyway, Muslims prefer to bury their dead near their city, and they've always avoided the places where pagans were buried. The tomb of Si Amon is beyond doubt the most important tomb in the Mountain of the Dead, and without comparison, the most beautiful tomb amongst the oases of the Western Desert. For that, it's visited by any visitor of the oasis. The tomb lies a little west to the tomb of Mesu Isis. It was found in October 1940. At that time, its well-preserved scenes were ruined by the hands of the soldiers who were in Siwa at that time. They've cut complete sections of the painted walls, which were made of plaster. Colonel Bather was one of the political British soldiers working in the Borders Division. He was working in Siwa, and he brought back to Cairo the monuments he could bring from Siwa and gave them to the ruling palace, but King Farouk presented them to the Egyptian Museum. When Dr. Ahmed Fakhri asked to be assigned to excavate in Siwa, depending on these objects, he never thought that he would find a disaster happening there. In his notes he wrote that he found many men and women and children and their domestic animals living together, filling the rock tombs. He has also found that numbers of soldiers visited the tomb of Si Amon, and for few pennies they paid to the family living there, they were allowed to cut any of the painted scenes to take back home as souvenirs. This looting has lasted for 2 months, which led to the destruction and mutilation of the best scenes in the tomb. The Syrians have benefited economically from the existence of the military forces, and many of them made a great fortune. The design of the tomb of Si Amon is similar to the tomb of Meso Isis. Its entrance faces the north, and steps lead to the door of a long chamber that ends with a burial chamber. Just like the rest of the tombs, this tomb was looted in the Roman period. During that period, 10 niches were cut into the walls of the main chamber to be used for the burials of members of one family, 5 in each one of the eastern and western sides. Many of these mummies were found in these niches when the tomb was found in 1940. Their mummification was so bad, some other monuments were found too, and shamefully sold to the soldiers. The cutting of these niches has destroyed not less than quarter of the main scenes that were relieved on the walls, but in spite of that, the tomb still keeps a lot of its scenes, both on the walls and on the ceiling. The rock in which the tomb was cut is of a good quality. In addition to that, the artists who painted and colored the scenes were of great skills. Most probably, they came from the Nile Valley. The owner of this tomb is a man called Si Amon, and his figure appears on the walls in several scenes with a beard and a wavy black coarse hair and a white skin. It's noticeable that he had no titles. In other words, he wasn't given a religious position in a temple, and he wasn't one of the administrators in the oasis. In spite of that, his tomb shows that he was an important man with wealth enough that enabled him to construct such a huge tomb. Most probably, he was a landlord or a big merchant. His name means literally the man of Ammon, and it was a common Egyptian name. His father's name was Brito, and it isn't an Egyptian name anyway. As for his mother, she was called Neferheret, which means the one with a beautiful face. The rest of the scenes in the tomb doesn't include a relief of any of them. As for the rest of the family members pictured, they are the wife of Si Amon and his 2 sons. His wife is characterized by her russet skin color, which looks more like reddish. Her name is Ra'at. His elder son's skin color is blonde like himself. As for his younger son, he was Venus like his mother. He was his father's boy, and he was dressed as any Greek lad would be dressed at that time. It is thought that the father of Si Amon was a Greek who immigrated to Egypt either from Greece or Cornea, and married an Egyptian woman and embraced the Egyptian religion. But in spite that Si Amon married as well an Egyptian woman, he cherished his Greek origin, so he let his beard and black curly hair grow in the Greek way, and he made his son wear a dress like the one worn by the Greek children. On the right side after the entrance has scenes that are divided into two rows. On the upper row, the famous scene of the judgment shows the court of justice, where Osiris sits in his chapel, and the balance of measuring the heart is in front of him, in addition to the 42 jury gods. Beside the scale stands the beast called Am, and the tomb's owner protected by goddess Might. Unfortunately, 3 niches were dug in that scene, which destroyed its majority. In the lower scene, see Ammon sits, while his younger son stands in front of him with his thick curly black hair, wearing a short grey cloak. Close to him stands goddess Nut beside a sycamore tree, in her hand a tray full of bread offerings, while she holds with her left hand a jar, pouring water in a pond, with a symbol of life drawn between the 2 chains of water. Then see Ammon is seen worshipping Isis and the phoenix bird. The scenes on the southern part of the wall continue and show see Ammon sitting, holding a long ebony stick inlaid with gold. On the bottom row, we see the mummification scene, where the mummy is laid on Osiris' bed and Anubis handles the body, while Isis stands at the head of the bed, and her sister Nephthys stands by his feet. Behind her stand the 4 children of Horus, Amsti, Habi, Gebehsnu F, and Dua Mut F. In the last scene in the bottom row, see Ammon sits on a chair, holding the symbol of life in one hand, and in front of him is a box, above which appear the tools used in the ritual of opening the mouth. On the other side stands the elder son, wearing tiger leather and holding with both hands the tools used in that ritual. Behind him stands his mother. In 1965, someone stole the picture of see Ammon. On the left wall, the mummy is carried over a wagon, protected by gods. Then see Ammon stood, and goddess Nekhbit flew over his head. Behind him is a box of the tools of opening the mouth ritual. His elder son wears the tiger leather and holds the tools of Weret Hekau used in that ritual. It's noticeable that the vulture goddess was painted with a high artistic taste. See Ammon is seen worshipping a number of gods. They are led by Ammon, followed by his wife Mut, and behind her goddess Hathor stands heading right and holds god Dua Mut F with both hands. On the other side, 2 gods look to the right. The first is god Mahisa, represented with the body of a human and the head of a lion. The second is a goddess holding Hathor's sistrum. In the last scene of the wall, see Ammon stands worshipping Isis and Horus and Osiris, and in front of him the offering table. The work of painting scenes inside the tomb was never finished. In some of the scenes, we can still see the net of squares, which the artist has drawn initially on the wall to adjust the proportions of the scene. They were supposed to be removed after finishing the painting. We can't help but admire the beautiful details in the dresses of the goddesses and the food above the offering table, like the two gazelles and the bread and the beer. In fact, these paintings are considered the best prototype of the Egyptian art in the late period. The ceiling of the tomb has been beautifully decorated and is divided into 3 sections. The first one is in the middle of the chamber, where there are 5 horizontal lines, each of which is different in its design. Starting from the texts until the end of the tomb, the decoration is composed of a line of hieroglyphic writings in the middle, and on each side there are consecutive lines of falcons and eagles spreading their wings and holding feathers with their paws. As for the third and final section of the ceiling, it's close to the tomb's entrance. After the horizontal lines of writings, Goddess Nut, the sky goddess, is represented in the middle. Her body is painted in beige, and her face was ruined upon the tomb's discovery. Above her head is the symbol of the sky, adorned with stars, and under her feet is the symbol of the land, painted in yellow with black dots, like the desert. The winged sun comes out of her body, and on her sides is the blue sky, adorned with yellow stars. On each side, 3 boats sail on the water. These 6 boats are used by the sun god in his day and night journeys. They are similar in their general style, for their front and back take the form of flowers, but their inner details are different. They represent the first and second and last hours of sunrise. For example, in the boat that forms the first hour of sunrise, God Khepr the scarab comes out of its egg with the help of Goddess Isis and Nephthys, while Horus stands close to the oars, and Thoth stands behind Nephthys. This tomb shows clearly the mix between the Greek and Egyptian art, for the Egyptian deities are on the walls, side by side with the people who have the Greek features and art, along with the empty cartouches and the flowers decoration. When Persia visited the Mountain of the Dead in 1928, he was pessimistic about what the excavations might reveal in the future. But ever since the locals dug and excavated here in 1940, and up till the latest excavations of 2003, his pessimism proved to be wrong. For almost 60 tombs were found in the area, and just like any place in Egypt, the monumental sites keep oozing its secrets, coming from a rich and honored buried civilization.